So now let us move to the third part of this lecture, which is about the recent development of Ethiopian public administration. Though Ethiopia has a long statehood history, public administration in this country has a very short time story. Currently, Ethiopia is a country characterized by an attempt to use apparatus of the government to expedite development and to overcome the deep-rooted poverty in the country. And if we can see the current situation in the country, there are some improvements in the area of social services, infrastructure development, application of different technologies in the public administration. And this is the result of this short development of the Ethiopian public administration. So now let us see how the Ethiopian public administration has evolved through time to the present stage, and we'll try to see this development by separating it into three phases. The first phase of the Ethiopian public administration history is between the end of the Zamana Matafint and the end of the monarchical era in 1974, and the second is the time where the dark regime has come to power. And finally, we'll try to discuss on the situation that exists today in our public administration. The different government through time use public administration somehow to make it a prime mover in promoting development, though the pace was different in the different government period. They use public administration as an executing arm for the government, and in fact many achievements were achieved through time, but still much remain to be accomplished for the citizens, because the country is still in a very backward and poor condition. So the early development of Ethiopian public administration starts with the end of the Zamana Masafint, which we can call a dark age for the country. With the end of the Zamana Masafint, Emperor Theodorus came to power with his reform tendency, and Emperor Theodorus tried to apply some forms of public administration activities by creating a national army which was promised to be paid a salary from the central treasury. He also tried to curtail church's privilege of tax exemption, which they enjoyed since the time of Ikuno Amlak. And in fact, he tried to reform land administration in the northern part of the country. But though he tried to reform issues of governance at that time, the country was in a very tight conflict with external and internal opposition for the central government of Emperor Theodorus. He was not able to reform as he intended to do. And finally, as we know, Theodorus was defeated by the British army, and next to him came Emperor Johannes, and Emperor Johannes was also highly engaged in border conflicts with external aggressors, and he spent most of his life as King of Kings fighting with others, including internal and external oppositions. So he ended up without any major change in the country's public administration. Following the days of Emperor Johannes, the emperor that came to power was Menelik II, and Menelik II was aiming at creating an orderly and efficient government, as he has somehow a better control of the entire country. And we can take Emperor Menelik as a pioneer to introduce modern administration in Ethiopia by appointing 9 ministers in 1907. The ministries were at that time the Ministry of Justice, Defense, Interior, Trade and Foreign Affairs, Finance, Agriculture, Ministry of Pain, Public Works and Ministry of Palace Administration. And these ministries shows how the emperor was interested to work on specific administration areas in the country. And after appointing these 9 ministers, he informed foreign missions in Addis Ababa to make aware of the modern working in his government, and in trying to create stronger relation between the foreign missions and the new ministers. He also issued guidelines. In fact, these guidelines were given with the appointment letters. He issued some critical guiding principles for the ministers, including warning them against any form of corruption in their assignment. He also promised to pay them salaries. He urged the ministers to employ educated people who are capable of serving the society. And in fact, the ministers he appointed met together to address the basic problems of at that time, including land legal system and the systems of inheritance in the country. So following this, the formation of the ministries, he also changed the existing system of appeal, which requires citizens to come to the center of the country for appeal on their grievances. That time he tried to divide the country into different regions so that citizens can bring their appeal to the nearest possible authorities that are very different from the earlier one, which requires them to come to the center of the country or to Addis Ababa. After the death of Emperor Menelik, his daughter Empress Zawditu came to power, and she tried to continue to work with the councils of ministers that he established earlier on his while he was in power. But these ministries and ministers weakened slowly due to power struggle between different factions within the nobility. And lately all ministers except Habte Georgis were fired, and because of this the government was run by the Empress Rastafari and Fitaurari Habte Georgis. In fact, an advisory council was formed a year after the ministers were removed. Then the next emperor that came to power was Emperor Haile Selassie, and Emperor Haile Selassie has done a lot in improving public administration in this country. He tried to reconstitute the ministerial system that was begun during the time of Emperor Menelik. And the emperor modernized the civil service by establishing more schools and other facilities, modernizing legal system, the health system, and the administrative apparatus by hiring educated, modern educated individuals, citizens, and even using expatriate employees that can help, that can coach and mentor the local people at that time. And legislation was issued reforming the taxation system with reorganizing the custom department at that time. So most of the administrative apparatus during the Emperor Haile Selassie was reformed, and civil servants were hired in a great number, and budget were used to be allocated, and offices for this new establishment, new administrative apparatus were built. And this is a very important departure in creating modern public administration in this country. And with the need for appropriate responsibility, accountability, and power, ministers were given legal power through the constitution. So we can say that Ethiopian public administration has its basic root during Emperor Haile Selassie, but this effort was interrupted by the Italian invasion, and later, after the end of the Italian occupation, the improvement continued in the public administration apparatus. So we can say that at this time of the Ethiopian public administration, a number of accomplishments have been achieved or made, but all these achievements were not without problems, and there are many problems when we assess the situation at that time. There is a problem related to not working for the citizens, because the public administration apparatus or government apparatus are there to serve the nobility only, and sometimes they work against the public interest, because they are always focusing on the interest of the royal family, the top officials, and the nobility. There is cronyism. It is a usual practice of hiring friends, relatives in the systems, and this by self reduce the professionalism of the apparatus of this public administration. There were discretionary interventions on decisions rather than following rules and regulations that were set for the public service. There were always an intervention by those at the top. There was also a prevalence of political clientelism, and focusing on individual and group interest of the nobility was one of an important point that relate to the administration of the country, and hence rules and regulation were sometimes bypassed by these officials, and these were reducing the standards of service in the public service. The ever-growing problem associated with the imperial regime brings a need to change the entire system, and many problems that were faced by the society leads the citizens to revolt against that regime, and that brings the Derg to power. And the Derg, or what we call it at that time, the socialist system in the country, emphasized on socialist ideology, which focuses on command economy. And when we relate it to the public administration, the system emphasized on politicization of the civil service, and hence there was an obligatory education of civil servants on socialist ideology, which later reduced the meritocracy that was established even in the imperial period. There was also a problem in pay. Pay differences were minimized, and pay increase was totally abandoned by the socialist or the Derg era. And the civil service at this point in time was taken as a relief point for the growing number of unemployed youths and citizens in the country. And because of this, the civil services ability to work on an ethical and standardized manner was eroded. And because of this, institutional, manpower, and statutory adjustments were not addressed. And though these challenges were there, the system wanted to implement new decision with the old rules and regulation. And there was a big fallacy in what they decide and how they implement the decision at that time. In some cases, replacements were made among the civil servants and the civil servants were removed from their places and were replaced by political appointees, and this further eroded the capacity of public administration in the system as a whole. So the effect of the regime on the civil service can be summarized as a decrease in merit and professionalism, an expansion and a growing corruption in the system, an inefficient service delivery, and neglect of law in the public administration as a whole. There is also a failure in delivering the public goods at this period.